Welcome to the second seminar for the Graduate Institute, second seminar of the Economics Department. Today, our graduate student, Linet Köse, is going to present her work on monetary policy spillover between the Fed and the ECB. Thank you for joining us, and I'll leave the floor to Linet now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the paper it mainly took stance in like investigating conventional policy actions in the US, the Federal Reserve Bank, and the European Central Bank. It's both two monetary unions. So I was thinking like seeing how the federal fund rate affects the Euribor rate, and in this the data used for the interest rates is like the 3-month Euribor rate and the federal fund rate, and like just like a little upsumming of like monetary policy. This is the central bank that controls the short-term rate through mainly open market operations, like by changing its monetary base. By buying treasury bills or bond, it can lower the interest rate, and vice versa. Selling treasury bills, it will raise the interest rate. Like it's acts as sort of printing money to the system, or contracting the money supply. And yeah, as I said before, like they're both two large unions, so it might be interesting to see if there exists some sort of spillover effects. I cannot go to next slide. Okay, one moment. Okay, super. And like just a little like very short literature review. Like Robert Mundell, I think you're all familiar with him. He showed like in 1962, sorry, there happened something, that capital mobility, it implies a simple relation between interest rate and exchange rate. And it can be perceived as a series of how monetary policy affect the exchange rate. Usually it states like if the central bank had raised the interest rate, then accordingly to the interest parity, as I will present later, the exchange rate should rise. Like if the US Federal Reserve Bank increased the federal fund rate, the dollar should appreciate. And then the uncurred interest party states that that returns has to be equal across borders in order to avoid large capital flows. Yeah, so that's I will speak more about the theoretical uncurred interest party. This is just like how we wanted to investigate this. I used an VAR model or a structural VAR model. One moment. Can you still hear me when he's talking?
We can hear you.
Yes,
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, the phone is in the background, but we can hear you.
Okay, but he's finished in a second. Okay, super. She's not as loud. So we want to create this extraordinary shock, and it's like created through using the VAR literature, but we end up using a vector error correction model. So by creating this extraordinary shock, we wanted to call it like monetary policy shock. This was done by constructing an orthogonal shocks from innovation, and it is possible to derive the dynamic mixed response from each variable. In this case, we have a 3-variable VAR model. We have 3 variables including the US interest rate, the European interest rate, and the exchange rate between these two countries. So I made through the auto-analyzation by the Koleski decomposition, the structural model will have a recursive order where we are imposing some contemporaneous restrictions. And hence we are imposing a particular chain on the world in a way, like of how variables should affect each other in under restrictions. I will show you what I mean by this. And but these the whole point with this identification is, and the autolocalization is like it enables one to call the shock we are creating a monetary policy shock, and the shock should be exogenous. But of course, it's hard to know when we're doing this about the shock exogenous. It can be easily affected by other factors, since it's actually the era we are imposing the shock on. This is just like little to show how the two interest rate actually like kind of moving with each other. We see the red line is the federal fund rate, and then we have blue line is the Euribor rate, and we see like a very clear pattern. Of course, like in after 2010s, most interest rate reaches zero lower bound. But yeah, we see like especially like the Federal Reserve go up, and so do the Euribor. So what is this uncurrent interest pattern? It's a simple relation, or symbol, I don't know about what to call it, symbol, relation between interest rate and assets prices, in this case, the exchange rate. And this is this uncurrent interest parity should be regarded as an equilibrium relationship, like the equalized returns across borders, not as a definition. It might not always hold due to things as risk premiums. I wrote foreign yen wrong. But by uncored, we means that the risk is uncored. Like there is also the cored interest party where it's possible to core the risk through forward contracts, but in the uncored interest party, this is left out. It depends on the expected exchange rate and not the forward exchange rate. And it's also like non-arbitrage investment strategy, where the two countries' currencies are regarded as perfect substitutes. And if there is interest differential between two countries,
Linet, sorry to interrupt you, but can you clarify what you mean in the last line? And I think the laws of spelling there. Can you go through once more again, please?
Which one? The non-arbitrage?
You mean it's a non-arbitrage?
Yeah, arbitrage.
Strategy.
Yeah, so yeah, okay. And if there is interest differential,
currencies seem to be perfect substitutes.
Yeah.
So interest differentials will create arbitrage opportunities.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes, exactly.
I wasn't quite sure. I thought you inserted some different language words there. Sorry.
No, yeah, but I think I might have writing arbitrage wrong, actually.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify. Sorry. Okay.
Okay. No problem. Ask anytime. Like, let's say the European investor is facing the choice in period T of holding assets in Europe, which will offer the interest rate at time period T and T+1 next period, and against the other options of holding assets in US dollars or just US assets and then gain the US interest rate. And he or she should then compare the expected return of holding those European assets, and this will be the left-hand side of the equation on next page, against holding US assets. Like, let's say an European investor, he or she buys in US assets, and in the meantime, the US dollar has been depreciated in period C, and she wants to reconvert it back to euros, then he or she will actually lose money. So here's the equation for the uncurrent interest party. This is like if the European investor is investing in Europe, and this is if the European investor chooses to invest in United States. And here E is defined as euros per dollars, hence how many euros $1 buys. So if the exchange rate increases, that's appreciation of the dollar. And what it states, just to make it broad roughly, the interest differential should be approximately equal to the expected depreciation of exchange rate in person. That means that the high yield currency, it should depreciate in order to offset those international arbitrage capital opportunities, as we speak about before. So if the European interest rate is higher and the euro is expected to appreciate, the US investor can earn a risk-free profit. That's the arbitrage capital opportunity. But what actually matters a lot is the expected exchange rate. Like, let's say if the euro's interest rate is higher than Euribor, and if the expected future value of the currency is increased, the value of the currency today will increase, probably. So if the dollar is expected to depreciate, so that this term will be larger, like smaller, then the US interest rate has to be higher to compensate for this expected depreciation. But the expected exchange rate is, of course, a complicated term. It's hard to predict what direction it will go in. But the fundamental of this is how to see, like, if the how the Europe Central Bank responds to the federal fund rate. If the US increase the interest rate, the European Central Bank might also increase the interest rate in order to avoid this arbitrage opportunity, since the both have a floating exchange rate regime where the both influence the exchange rate through the interest rate. So the exchange rate should be considered as an endogenous force. And of course, as said before, the uncurrency part might not hold. The investor might demand a risk premium, and that can't be paid in both countries at the same time. And investment in the domestic economy might also be considered as less risky. So now we go to how we tested this. As I said before, we want to create this pure external shock to the interest rate. To obtain this dynamic relation, we estimate the impulse response function to assess the spillover effects if the federal fund increase, right. And it should be noted that only the response to a shock to the federal fund rate is significant in this. So we will see that. And the characteristic of the shock is like the shock should be exogenous with respect to the current and lagged endogenous variables in the system. And the variable should be uncorrelated with this exogenous shock. Otherwise, we don't have this unique causal effect. And the shock will not be this primitive force, but rather an endogenous response of policies to another primitive shock somewhere in the world. And the shock should also represent some unanticipated movements in the variable or news about the futures. And like these restrictions we are imposing, they might not necessarily be true. That means we are failing to trying to obtain the world causal chain. And that can also be reasoned by some estimates as insignificant. So as I said before, by auto-localization, by the Kolesky decomposition, we wanted to give the model a structural interpretation. And we having as a result a structural model with recursive ordering, and we wanted to recurring those structural parameters. And this is done through reduced form estimation. And that enabled us to estimate the impulse response function. So we can investigate in the dynamic interaction between endogenous variable in the system. And as I said, we have a three-variate VAR model. And so how I obtained the SVAR model is by imposing those restrictions, since there is more parameters in the SVAR, in the structural vector autoregressive model, and is the vector out reduced form model. So the SVAR model includes the contemporaneous effect between the model, which the reduced form doesn't. It only include the lagged values. So there is imposed some restriction on the matrix B. I'm not including these mathematical equations in the in the presentation, but if you want to see them, I can send the paper. But I imposed the restriction on matrix speed through identification. And hence we are imposing restrictions on the contemporaneous effect between variables. That means like if we are having a shock to the federal fund rate, the federal fund rate can affect the Euribor and the exchange rate in period T, but the Euribor cannot affect the federal fund rate in period T, as well can the exchange rate not affect the Euribor rate in period T, but the Euribor can affect the exchange rate in period T. I will show you the decomposition. So, but there's a problem, like if the VAR model is not stationary, like having constant mean and variance and covariance, we might have spurious regression due to we think there might exist a relation between variables, even through the doesn't. So we tested through the augmented Fuller test about there was a unit root, and to check if the system was and stationary, and the system was non-stationary, and our variables are all integrated of order 1. So we can use the Johansson's co-integrations test to test if there exists a long-run relationship between those variables, because then we can have the co-integration vector and hence obtain the impulse response function through those non-stationary variables. And by that we mean that if the system has a co-integration vector, it means there exists this magnification factor. There exists a unique number we can times the variable bills, so they have gonna obtain a stationary relation between them, and this linear combination is stationary and integrated of order 0, as we say when the variables are stationary. So like how it's Johansson's co-integration test is you are imposing you are testing for how many co-integrating vectors there is, and in this case the maximum rank is 3 because we have 3 variables. And in the case 1, as we see here, all linear variables are stationary. So we just having a basic bar model, and we did not need to do this because it was not non-stationary. And if case 2, that doesn't exist a long-run relationship, so we can just use the first order differences, like we are taking the first order difference if the system is non-stationary. But then we will throw important information away if they exist a co-integrating vector. And in the case 3, the matrix has a co-integration vector. It cannot be full rank, but it should be something in between. I speak a little loud enough because you start to speak. Of course, we rejected the head. This is wrong order. The R equals 0 could be in the top and then go down, 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 down. Yeah. What I first tested about R equals 0, and that's a null hypothesis that exists co-integrates. That was rejected. But I failed to reject the null hypothesis that there exists 1 or less than 1 co-integrated vector, and that means that we have a co-integrated relationship. And in this case, we have 2 co-integrating vectors, and then the Granger theorem states that if they exist co-integration and variables are integrated of order 1, there exists this long-run relationship. So we ended up using the vector error correction model, and as I said, I did not include the estimates of that in the presentation.
Sorry, can I stop you for a minute? Yeah. I think there is only 1 co-integrating relationship according to those tests. Did you say 2 relations? Can you go back 1 slide?
Yeah.
Here I kind of see there's 1 co-integrating relationship. I mean, you stop when you fail to reject, right? So
Yeah.
there is a single co-integrating relationship, if I'm not mistaken.
But I also fail to reject that the rank is 2.
So do you also reject the r less than or equal to 2?
Yeah.
You reject? So how these are the critical values next to it? Okay, I'm wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it falls to single digit, yeah. Okay, you are
but
right.
also it's me. Sorry, I did not include out here. Like that's text. Yeah, I don't know why I did that.
Yeah, no, I read the critical value wrong. That's why I see. When it drops to single digits, I just assumed it was a non-rejection. Okay. You do have two of them. You're right.
Okay, cool. Then we agree. Okay. So for these identification schemes, in order to recall those innovation, we need at least, in this case, we need at least 3 restrictions due to this statement, and that stems from that the SWAR model had more parameters that the reduced form bar had. So in this, how we define the first case is like the sequential chain model is defined as the fill fund rate has a contemporaneous effect on the Euribor, but the Euribor doesn't have on the fill fund rate. And the Euribor has a contemporaneous effect on the exchange rate, but the exchange rate doesn't have it on the Euribor and the fill fund rate. So of course there might be an endogeneity problem that the monetary police is carried out in response to the state of the economy, and that renders monetary police endogenous. And we don't know in those experiments why we are having these shocks. And we're just making a controlled experiment, as it's called. Of course, it requires this recursive order is significant. You could impose like the block exogeneity. That is, you also are posing restrictions on the lag values between the variables. But I don't do this because the European Union is a big economy. So it's likely it has some spillover effects on the US. Maybe if I took spillover effect from US to Denmark, we could impose like the block exogeneity assumption, where Denmark has absolutely no effect on the US economy, and so on, or vice versa. So this is the results for the first one. And here we see like this is a shock to the federal fund rate, and hence how it affects the Europe rate. This is significant. We can see both. This is like the mean, like the average, like the expected value, and the these red lines, what is it called in English, the scattered line, the dot lines, it's like interval estimates. And if both of them are positive, or if both of them are negative, then the result would be significant. Like we can't both have one line that is positive and the other line is negative. So what this is stating is like 1% in one standard deviation shock to the federal fund rate leads to a positive response, like an increase in the Euribor rate. The problem is, of course, here that the shock doesn't die out. It should die out. It explodes. It might be due to the problems with the stationarity.
Can I ask again something?
Yeah.
Do you have the specifications of your model? Is it a vector error correction model?
Yeah,
and what is the order of lags? Do you have any lags in there?
Yes, I have. I have had included.
I mean, this if it's not the cumulated responses, this should level out. I mean, if it's the cumulated responses, it should level out. If it's the uncumulated response, then it should die off at some point. And you are not getting that, which means the model is maybe a bit too short, or you didn't include the co-integrating information in it.
Yeah, the co-integration information is included. The vector correction modeling includes 5 flags.
5 flags, and it still doesn't level out. Okay.
No.
So maybe on your graph, if you do more than 12
I tried.
periods, it didn't.
No, it doesn't die out.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, maybe you need some dummies in there for.
There is one dummy. I
change,
don't know why I
etc.
did not say that. There is including a dummy for the financial crisis and the 0 interest rates after 2015.
Well, so what was the time period here?
One moment. That's from 1999, where the European Union was like created, or Euro area, until 2019.
19.
November 2019.
Yeah, maybe you need more dummies. That may be the reason, because there are a couple of crises in there and policy
Yeah,
maybe you
the
need
.com crisis didn't take into account, and the financial crisis. But this model should be improved.
Yeah, well, you can tweak
definitely.
it with deterministics. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Super. But yeah, as we speak about how this doesn't die out, and there might be better ways to estimate this, like using different sort of bar models. As we see here as example, the nominal exchange rate response to the federal fund rate, and this nominal exchange rate is defined as, again, euros per dollar. So that means if it increases, that's an appreciation of a dollar. The results are here insignificant, and they're not robust, and because the interval estimates are positive as well as negative. But if we should make an interpretation on it, a 1 unit increase in the federal fund rate would lead to has a negative effect on the nominal exchange rate. That means that the dollar is depreciating on average. You could state that. And after 8 months, it will gradually start to depreciate the euro. But they are insignificant. And this is the results of when we're making it an orthogonal impulse response to the euro rate. This is insignificant in both cases. We see like the response from the federal fund bank is positive but insignificant, and so as well is it for the Euribor, like the nominal exchange rate. So okay, reason for the insignificant results, like the exchange rate is affected by many factors, and they might end up in the error term. We might have this idiosyncratic error affecting the shock, like idiosyncratic component. There's time varying and unobserved factor not including the model. And the larger this idiosyncratic error is, the larger measurement error we will have. And as said before, we don't know why they are having this shock. We might also have imposed a wrong recursive order. So we're not saying anything about the reality. And one reason why the shock to the federal fund rate was significant, and hence the response for the Euribor, might be that the US economy is a very large economy. It might be less affected by these measurement errors. And of course, there can be the omitted variable pairs, like factors end up in the regression and the omitted factors end up in the shock. And we might mistakenly think that the Euribor responds solely to a change in the federal response, and we might actually have a biased impulse response function. And like from this paper, you cannot state whenever this uncovered interest party hold, and yeah, about it's true. But that's it, what I have to say. As I said, like there's carried out some diagnostic, of course, the ARC test, the portmanteau test, the JB test to check for homoscedastic and autocorrelation, like a nominality. Yeah, but that's it I have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I have been asking questions, and I'm going to ask a few more.
Yeah, of course.
But all in all, this is the textbook application of this method of modeling. So it is very nice. You have been through all the steps technically to be able to realize what is wrong and how to play with it to make it right and give you the results you want is a matter of experience. And if you try some more dummies, maybe the leg order, maybe the recursive order, as you said, it's going to come around and be a paper for you is what I feel about this presentation. Your last sentence, though, I do not agree. If you have a co-integration relation, and if you specify it according to your recursive order, you can say in the long run, the uncovered interest rate parity is represented by that co-integrating vector. And what you are looking at with the impulse response analysis is adjustments after shocks to this long-term effect. So UIP is supposed to hold in the long run anyway. It's not going to be visible through impulse response analysis.
Okay,
if you have a co-integrating vector, you can say it holds.
Yeah, in the long run, because that's like the long run relationship it has.
Yeah. So yeah, that is what I can say at this point, and I would like to open the floor to more questions, more discussion, maybe.
Okay, Linet, thank you for this hard work. You've done really well, and I'm sure Özden Hoca checked your econometrics with this too. What I would like, did you use R for doing this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Actually, the exchange rate is affected by many factors. This is something you would always face if you are doing partial modeling. Maybe you need to consider a bit larger type of modeling for these sort of things. Obviously, it is more difficult and more challenging. That is, I would agree absolutely with your first sentence because of that. We would like to see you to enhance and extend this sort of work. It was very good. Thank you. I was just going to make a statement, no question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Now he comes again.
Now, you mentioned your diagnostic tests were problematic, right? Maybe that is the reason why you don't get the convergence or leveling out you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can take care of those vector heteroskedasticity, vector normality issues, especially the normality issue.
Because there's autocorrelation, they are not homoscedastic estimates, and they are not normal.
You need a longer leg and a couple of dummies is what I feel. I mean, I haven't seen your estimation results, but they can be improved is what I think. Is this annual data?
No, it's monthly.
Monthly data, okay.
Yes, she said that.
Monthly, yeah, well, maybe, are they seasonally adjusted? There may be seasonal factors. I mean, not in macroeconomics typically, but you can still check it out if it's going to improve at all.
They are not seasonal adjusted.
Yeah, well, I mean, with financial data, we don't adjust, but it's just an option if you want to just try and see if anything gets better.
But I think when I made it, I had a reason for why I didn't adjust for seasonality.
It's
my
because
head, I have.
financial data, you
Yes.
probably, yeah.
Financial data doesn't really need very much seasonal
Yeah,
adjustment.
typically, but now that we have these confusing results, we can try to see if that
Yes.
may be a problem.
We can. So,
Any other
yeah.
questions?
I don't have. But if you want me to send the paper, I can send it to you.
Okay, and what I was going to ask, are you thinking of maybe working on this paper a little more and maybe sending it to a journal or somewhere? Not as it is, but what's your
No.
future plan?
With this?
Uh-huh.
Nothing. I know nothing. Like
Okay.
if it's gonna be improved, yes, maybe, but I did not as a think of it.
Yeah, well, it's a bit too textbook. It is a replication of what Johannes and Yuselis have done in their textbook. But if you can bring another variable that puts a turn on things, maybe, yeah, you can think about it. You can make it an interesting argument by introducing some other variable into the picture, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I will think about it. Let's see how much time.
It's all that work, not to do anything with it is, waste.
I also did it because I wanted to learn more about the Valley literature.
That best way.
Yeah, exactly. Like how to use it in R. So I still I want to learn more about it. Yeah.
Now, in terms of these vector tests, vector diagnostics, if you have access to OX PC give, it makes this sort. OX Metrics is a software suite, which is particularly suited to this sort of estimation, time series, var, vec sort of estimation. And the diagnostics come automatically, and it has these built-in algorithms to make you choose a model, etc. If you have access to OX Metrics, PC give, you can try working with it instead of R, and because more diagnostics are thrown at you readily, things may go easier. You can improve the model maybe easier with that software.
I will try and check it out. I never heard about it before, but I will look at it. It sounds interesting.
Yeah, OX Metrics. It's proprietary, of course. You have to pay a lot, but if your school if your school in Denmark has access to it, which I think it could.
I'm in school in Turkey.
Well, you don't have any connections with your previous school or anything, no?
No, it's finished. Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway, yeah, so there is such a software, and if you can find a cracked version or whatever, or the licensed version, just try.
Okay,
Okay, so how about your flight? Are you late already?
No, it's it's flying in 40 minutes, but I think I have to board in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if there are any more contributions, they are welcome. If not, we can wrap it up.
We can see the audience are a bit quiet. What's Tuğçe doing? She's not asking any question.
Tuğçe, I'm not sure she was able to. Did she come?
Yes. She needs to turn your microphone on. I think her microphone is. Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, but I've missed lots of notations at the beginning of the presentation. So, but actually, I have just one more question, but I couldn't understand anything. Maybe Özlem will help me. What about the number of the rank and the number of the co-integrated vectors? They should be equal or not? Because in that slide, Linet assumes that R is the rank of the matrix and K is the number of co-integrated vectors. Am I right?
Yes, yes, exactly.
Should they be equal?
No, because then you have a full rank, and then you will have then the model would be stationary.
No, that is on the slide. The table you looked at was the results for Johansson's trace and eigen
My
value
result.
test.
Yeah, I have. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm not.
And
Yeah,
you actually need your rank to be less than
yeah, it's also less
dimension
than.
of the matrix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my rank is 2. The dimension of the matrix was 3.
I'm saying to Tuğçe, just to clarify,
okay.
she asked me,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you pick one of the vectors, you make it, normalize it so that it represents the uncovered interest rate parity. That is your long run relation. And then you estimate the error correction model around it. And once you do that, that model, that vector error correction model or a co-integrated VAR model, then you can use the residuals for impulse response analysis. And the impulse response analysis here doesn't satisfy us. It gives some confusing results because the main model probably has something missing, like a dummy variable, like some more legs on top of it. Maybe the chain of events is wrongly configured. If all these components were there, or maybe some data deficiency, which creates the heteroscedasticity, autocorrelation, non-normality, etc. Some of it we can correct, some of it is unsolvable if it's a data issue, and this is your data, this is the interest rate, there's nothing else to do. So if Linet focuses on those factors a bit more, the overall results would, I believe, improve. So if you are interested how to carry out the tests mentioned here, I can later refer you to some book or something.
That could be nice.
It's too long to explain here, right? We have just done.
Yeah, see you.
What
I
else?
stop sharing.
Okay. Thank you all for your contributions, and we thank Linet for this nice presentation.
Yeah, thank you for listening.